an announcement to make on our principal.
Yeah, at this time I'd like for Deputy Superintendent Keith Oswald to come forward and introduce a new member of our team. Keith?
Thank you, Dr. Fenoy. Good evening, board members. I'll ask Dr. Rodriguez to please come up here. We're elementary school, as well as next month we'll have a couple of other principals show up, but they are starting their vacation early and starting the new year early, so they couldn't be here tonight. So Dr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. Chairman Shaw, Vice Chairwoman Dr. Robinson, board members, Dr. Fenoy, and Mr. Oswald. I'm pleased to join you here this evening with Mrs. Green, who is our Central Region Instructional Superintendent, to introduce to you our next leader for Cypress Trails Elementary, Mr. Bruce Salter.
Thank you. Chairman Shaw, Vice Chairwoman Robinson, school board members, and Dr. Fenoy. I sit before you extremely humbled and honored to be the next principal at Cypress Trail Elementary. When I moved to Palm Beach County 12 years ago, I began as a teacher at Royal Palm Beach Elementary School. Since then, my family and I have made our home in the village of Royal Palm Beach, and so now I am very excited to come back to the village to lead Cypress Trails. One of my strongest ideals as a school leader is the power that administrators, teachers, and staff have to help all students reach their fullest potential. This belief first came to fruition when I was a child. I've known that I wanted to be an educator since I was in 6th grade. When I was in elementary school, I had a severe stuttering impediment. And there were 2 years of school that shaped my future. Unfortunately, though, in 5th grade, I had a teacher who once embarrassed me in front of the entire class about my stuttering. This could have derailed my love for school, but luckily I had a teacher the next year who saw my potential, and he helped me to face my fears of speaking and reading publicly. The power that he had to transform my confidence and plant a seed to become an educator was tremendous. The impact that he had on me is my anchor for what I do as a school leader, and I will always keep the needs of students as the top priority as I lead the team at Cypress Trails. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for important people in my life. Thank you to Dr. Fenoy, Mr. Oswald, Dr. Rodriguez, and Mrs. Green for this tremendous opportunity. Thank you to my principal and mentor for the last 6 years, Judy Gerard, for helping me to grow and learn how to maximize resources to help students be successful. Thank you to the entire faculty, staff, and families at Seminole Trails Elementary School. I will always be grateful for the love and the support that I had there. Thank you to Suzanne Watson, Tracy Gogler, Stacy Quinones, and Linda Edgecombe for inspiring me to be an administrator by simply being amazing role models when I was an aspiring leader. Thank you to Nora Rosenswag, who has become a great mentor and a friend. And last but not least, thank you to my family, including my mother and father-in-law who are here tonight, and everyone back home in Indiana watching online. I want to especially thank my wife. If there's anything harder than being the spouse of a principal, believe me, it's being the spouse of an assistant principal. And I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for her love and her support. I'm not even sure if she's actually here physically in the room to hear this, as she may or may not be in the courtyard right now chasing around our 2-year-old son. Thank you all again so much for this opportunity, and I can't wait to get to work.
Thank you very much. And I think she was in here just a couple minutes ago. I think we just saw her leave. So thank you very much. That moves us to the consent agenda. Are there any other items anybody would like to pull? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Mrs. Whitfield, second by Mrs. Brill. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed. Motion carries 7-0. That moves us to our new business. First item, Dr. Fenoy, is BCS2 Educational Plant Survey.
Yes, I recommend the board to approve the educational plant survey as submitted.
Is there a motion? Motion by Mrs. Brill, second by Mr. Barbieri. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? All opposed. Motion carries 7-0. Next item is BRD 1 Superintendent's Evaluation Instrument. That's mine. I recommend the board discuss its nope. I went to the wrong one. I recommend the board approve the superintendent's evaluation instrument as submitted to the board. I think we got it a few weeks ago. Is there a motion? Motion by Mr. Barbieri, second by Mrs. Whitfield. Discussion, Mrs. Brill.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Mr. Howard for taking in my input on the evaluation. The tool that is posted is a little bit different, but there were some areas that I felt were a little too broad, and he retooled it, and I just wanted to express my appreciation because all of the concerns that I had were worked through expertly. So thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next item is the Legislative Committee Representative and Alternate, BRD2. I recommend that the board appoint our two representatives. Mrs. Andrews has served as our legislative representative with FSBA, and Mrs. Brill is our alternate. Is there a motion? Motion by Mr. Barbieri, second by Dr. Robinson. Any discussion? It's going to continue to be quite a challenge in Tallahassee with all of these. So at this point, we'll call the question. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Our next item is F1 resolution. Dr. Fenoy.
I recommend the board approve the resolution to hold a referendum to seek voter approval to levy 1 meals for operational purposes in district public schools in FY 2020, FY 2021, FY 2022, and FY 2023, and authorize the chairman and the superintendent to sign all necessary documents.
Is there a motion? Motion by Mrs. Whitfield, second. Second by Mrs. Brill. Discussion. Mr. Barbieri.
Mr. Shaw, I'm going to be a little lengthy, so I would appreciate some courtesy from the board members. After receiving a copy of Ron Meyer's letter, Attorney Ron Meyer's letter of June 17th, the administration, as all of my colleagues know, decided to change the ballot language to remove the restriction of sharing referendum funds with charter schools. After lengthy discussions yesterday with Superintendent Fenoy, General Counsel Rico, Deputy General Counsel Littlejohn, I asked the superintendent if we could meet this morning, and I had the meeting with him this morning with Mrs. Rico, Mr. Littlejohn, Mrs. Schuyler, Mrs. Paul, and Mr. Oswald. Knowing I needed to get ready for that meeting, I spent half the night researching this issue to be prepared to discuss it at this morning's meeting and to discuss it with all of you today. First, I want to direct the board's attention to Attorney Ron Meyer's letter. You all have a copy of Mr. Meyer's letter. Meyer takes the position that the legislature, in, quote, recently enacted language in section 1002.3317B, end quote, basically prohibits our school board from restricting voter-approved millage like the type we are contemplating putting on the November ballot to district-operated schools, and specifically cites the reference in that statute that says that charter schools are entitled to their proportionate share of the district's, quote, current operating discretionary millage levy, end quote. I have two major issues with Mr. Meyer's opinion. First of all, the language of 1002.3317B is not newly enacted. I have with me tonight a copy of the statutory sections of that same provision from the 2014 statutes, the 2015 statutes, the 16, 17, and 18 Florida statutes, and the language remained the same in every one of those years. Consequently, there is no newly enacted legislation that restricts us from excluding charter schools. Number two, Meyer goes on to indicate that voter-approved millage is included within the definition in that statute of the district's, quote, current operating discretionary millage, which the statute clearly indicates must be shared with charter schools. On a practical basis, I ask if that section and the inclusion of voter-approved millage increase in the requirement that we share the district's current operating discretion millage are what preclude us from restricting the payment to only district-operated schools, why hasn't any charter school starting way back in 2014 made a claim on the 0.25 mils or the sales tax referendum funds that were voter-approved in 2010, 2014, and the recent voter-approved sales tax increase? The question in my mind then became, what is the definition of, quote, a district's current operating discretionary millage, end quote, that we are required to share with charter schools? Does it include a voter-approved millage increase? If it does, then Meyer is correct, and we do not have the authority to exclude charters from a voter-approved millage increase. I could find no definition in the statutes as to what is included within a district's current operating discretionary millage. But upon further research, I found this 2017-2018 Florida Department of Education Funding for Florida School Districts publication. On page 5 of that publication, the DOE sets forth a schedule, which all of you have now, which I brought to the attention of the administration at this morning's meeting. There are a total of 8 very different types of millages clearly differentiated by the DOE for school districts provided under Florida statutes. Of those 8, there are only 2 that are relevant to today's discussion. The first is the millage that may be passed pursuant to Florida Statute 1011.32.2, which is additional millage not to exceed 4 years, which is exactly the type of millage on which our proposed referendum is based. The second is the millage which may be established by the school board pursuant to Section 1011.71.1, which is the district's current operating discretionary millage, which we are required to share with charter schools, and which Meyer indicates in his letter includes voter-approved millage. Based on the DOE definition of millages, the DOE clearly differentiates between operating discretionary millage established by the school board and additional millage established by voter referendum. I could find nowhere in the Florida statute that requires the school board to share additional operating millage by voter referendum with charter schools. Meyer's letter goes on to cite the recent Indian River case. I read that case. I believe all of you have now received the case and have probably read it. In that case, there was voter-approved millage, and the court basically said that voter-approved millage was part of the district's current operating discretionary millage, and therefore the Indian River School District must share the funds with charter schools. Based on all the information I just presented to you, I believe the court erred in its determination. Unfortunately, the Indian River School Board did not appeal that decision. I believe the appellate court would have overturned the lower court. In any event, the Indian River case is not binding in Palm Beach County. So with all of that said, I believe that the electorate in this county approved additional operating millage pursuant to Section 1011.73.2, and the referendum language specifically excludes charter schools, that we would not be required to share that millage with charter schools. I also believe that by removing the restriction as to charter schools from our referendum language and substituting what is now on our agenda tonight with the words district public schools, we are absolutely including charter schools, as I believe any court would find that a charter school is a district public school. If the voters approve the millage with the district public school substitution, I don't believe we could successfully defend non-payment of the millage to the charter schools. We now find that one or more of the charter schools are threatening to file an injunction unless we include charter schools in the referendum language. Of course, we all recognize that the safety of public charter school children is no less important than the safety of children in the traditional public schools. What I proposed to the administration in my meeting this morning is that we enter into an agreement with the charter schools to provide funding in the form of grants to the district's public charter schools to be used specifically for the charter schools to hire law enforcement officers and mental health professionals for the children that attend the public charter schools, the same as we intend to do for the children in the non-charter public schools, and in return, the charter schools agree not to file an injunction against the referendum. The administration's concern, which I agree is valid, is that there are so many different charter school operators that it is unlikely that we could get all of them to agree to our proposal, and any one of them could file an injunction. With the very tight deadline of having to approve the referendum language at a regularly scheduled school board meeting, then get it to the county commission no later than their August 16th commission meeting for their approval to put it on the November ballot, and then get it to the supervisor of elections no later than August 24th deadline for the supervisor to get it on the ballot, we are taking a chance that any injunction which is filed would cause us to miss one or more of those deadlines, and consequently, our referendum would not be included in the November election. So the question for us tonight is, are we willing to take the risk? The charter school threat of injunction is basically putting our backs against the wall. Earlier, the speakers referred to it as extortion. I won't go on the record of calling it extortion, but there is no question that any of the charter schools could, if they desired, cause us to miss the deadline by filing an injunction at the 11th hour unless we surrender to their demands that we include charter schools in the referendum language. That would not only put at risk the retention of 600 plus fine arts teachers, physical education teachers, and choice and academy teachers that are currently being funded through the .25 mil levy would come to end this year, but also the loss of millions of dollars that we need for security purposes. So basically our decision tonight is, if we change the language and we include charter schools, we have no choice but to pay the charter schools for the next 4 years. We don't have time to litigate this and get it in time to get it on the ballot, so we have to take the risk of whether or not they will file an injunction, whether we can get the injunction settled before the ballot language has to be submitted to the county commission at their August meeting. So that's the situation we're facing tonight. The charter schools have put our backs against the wall, and we have to make a decision on whether or not we're willing to take the risk that we can get this handled in time to get it on the ballot.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Brill.
Thank you. So I'm going to start off by saying that I'm not an attorney, and so my comments are not going to be at the same level as Mr. Barbieri's. I'll start off by saying that I don't support taxing. adding taxes. I've said that before. However, I do realize that we're in a situation where we really do not have an alternative. So that being said, as Mr. Barbieri has stated, we are at risk. I think we made a mistake, personally. I thought we should have gone out in August, but it's too late for that. We can't even address that at this juncture. But we are at risk, if the language is changed, as Mr. Barbieri said, to losing 650 teachers plus from that $250,000 that we currently have. Now, one thing that made me feel a lot better about the change in language is in the resolution part of the referendum, and it states that the added language says the expenditure of all proceeds of this levy, including by charter schools, shall be subject to oversight and review by the Independent Referendum Oversight Committee created by the School Board Policy 1.099. So there is going to be oversight as to how the monies are used. That's the first thing. The second thing, I know Mr. Barbieri mentioned the possibility of having agreements with the charter schools. The way I looked at this was when I walk out the door to my house, to my left is a charter school teacher with children in the charter schools. To my right, I have a public school teacher with children in the public schools. How do I look to my left and say your children don't deserve the same safety that the children to the right deserve? So that could be addressed in having an agreement, but really at this juncture, I think we run a huge risk. And I think that, I do understand that one of the schools doesn't like the current language the way it is. Well, so be it. But I do think the proper thing to do would be to leave the ballot language as it is. I'm not a gambler, so I don't want to take a chance on us not being able to go out for this referendum because I'm not going to sacrifice them. And I do think that you will have a commitment. We can have people serving on that oversight committee from the charter schools. The good charter schools don't want the bad charter schools to get the money either. So, we're all on the same page, and I hope that one day down the road, those good charter schools that are doing good work that we talk about all the time will join with us to fight against the bad charter schools that don't have that oversight. But I will support the language as it stands because I am not going to gamble. Thank you.
Mrs. Andrews?
Thank you. And as I spoke with Dr. Fenoy, I was concerned that we did not have enough time to really discuss these issues. Apparently, this whole piece for this change came about, I guess, within 48 hours ago. I have done my best to read all the literature that has been sent to me, as well as speaking to the General Counsel and the Superintendent. And now we're here to make a decision. We do want to keep all children safe here in Palm Beach County. That's the first thing. And we know that we've got to get monies for our teachers. We've got to get money for safety. And certainly with the $250,000 that we've had over the past few years, it's a big deal if we don't get that money because a lot of teachers will lose their job. You're talking about non-reappointments today. You'll have a whole lot of excess teachers that may not be able to have a job if we don't get this money. And, when you think about it, I wish I'd had time to talk to the charter schools because we have not had an opportunity to hear from them and what their thoughts are. As we read the letter from the charter school that said that, guess what, we'll file an injunction because we don't like this new language that you have. So in passing this, we still may have a problem because some injunction might be filed against the school district of Palm Beach County. So we're kind of in a catch-22 with not much time left. We've got to get to the county. We've got to get on the ballot. And we've just got to get the money to take care of our children because this money is for the children. It's for the teachers in the classroom. If we don't have the funding to pay them, we're not going to have the best and the brightest there to take care of our children. If we can't keep our kids safe, we can have an incident. So we know we need the money there. And arts, music, and PE, that's something that this county said was important. It certainly impacts academic achievement. So we're kind of in a timeline now that I wish I had more time to research. But right now, as we look at this, we have to take a chance. We're taking a chance either way, whether we go with the original language. We could certainly get an injunction filed going with the new language there that's saying district schools. We can get an injunction. So we're just in a maze right now. and we've got to just get out there and do something. And we've got to start working together, parents, teachers, students, everybody here in Palm Beach County, to kind of take care of kids. And that's where we are right now, trying to get the funding to take care of kids. And I recognize the charter schools that don't work, and I recognize the ones that do, and I recognize the state has to make a lot of changes. That's why I go to Tallahassee to work on making it a level playing field for Palm Beach district schools, and to get the charters on board so that they can have those restrictions that we have to go through as a Palm Beach County school district. So there's a lot of work to be done, but we don't really have all that time right now. We're just hoping the voters will help us to keep our children safe, to help us with our teachers, to make sure that we do the things that's necessary to keep this district where it is as a #1 district in the state of Florida for educating our children.
Thank you. Mrs. McQuinn and then Mrs. Whitfield.
I still have many questions. Just one, for example. When staff first came to us about holding a referendum for the safety, mental health counseling, teacher salaries, etc., I'm fully supportive of that. I know we need it. I know we do not have enough money allocated from the state to do what we have to do. I know that. I know that when we supported the recommendation to move forward, that our budget finance departments had determined how much money we need. They're able to project about what money will we take in and what will it cost. You know, we know about how many schools we're going to have, so we know our officers, we know the equipment, we have a pretty good understanding of student enrollment projections, so we can figure how many teachers we'll have. They are very good at that. This former math teacher doesn't even want to begin to try to figure it out, but they know that answer. And that's the money we were asking for. It's very concerning to me that a school board, and I haven't had the opportunity to be part of those referendums, but every time the school board has asked for that money, there has been huge accountability from us about how we spend the money. And now we don't get that full amount of money. We already had to turn over capital funds that we did not expect to turn over to charter schools, which now we've had to scurry. In addition to doing that with our capital referendum 2 years ago, well, we've got to fill in gaps there because we had to turn over a huge amount of capital money. And I can't remember the other piece about the money. It'll come to me in a minute. So I can't tell you yet how I'm going to vote. I need to hear more discussion. I don't like at the last minute, I've read everything, unless something came since the meeting started. I've read it all. I've heard arguments from people who are attorneys who have conflicting viewpoints. I've heard from people who think they're attorneys and can interpret the law. So I need to hear more, but I have to tell you at this very moment, I'm not inclined to be hijacked at the last minute. I'm using our CTA president's words to me on the phone. I don't like having language changed on the morning that I have to make a very important vote. So nobody's convinced me yet.
Mrs. Whitfield?
Thank you so much. I want to talk a little bit about state funding because I think this is important to frame this discussion, especially for the people that are watching in the public. When I first came on the board last time, we talked a lot about maintenance dollars, the maintenance dollars that had not been given to us by the state since the recession. Those maintenance dollars were so far backed up that we felt that we had to go to the community to ask for help. I, at the time, thought I will never go back and ask people for more money because I really do respect how difficult it is to live in this county. I spend a lot of time working on the homeless and hungry committees in the county, working with the families who need it the most, and I would never ask them for more money or any money if I could. So when we went to ask for the sales tax dollars, The reason we did that was because we were so far behind the 8 ball and our buildings were falling apart. We were able to go and ask the communities for funding there, and I recognized how much that was. When we did that plan, we had a lot more time to prepare our thoughts and our arguments and really frame out the discussion that we were having. We were able to put together entire websites on how we were going to spend the money. That I thought was a really good way to go and ask for funding. The problem with this is that we did have a tragedy this year. The tragedy came about while we were in session and only a few months ago, and we've really been scrambling since then. The reason we've been scrambling is because in this short amount of time, we've been given new mandates from the state. Those mandates came down and said that we had no choice but to come up with more money to put a police officer in every school. Do I want a police officer in every school? You better believe I do, because I have to send my daughter to those schools, and she's in elementary school, and she doesn't have a police officer right now. So to me, when you talk about caring for our children, I mean, you can't care more than sending your kid every day to these schools. So I want a police officer in every school because everyone cares that much about their kids. So we are scrambling a little bit, and we don't have all the answers by any means. But I know that that's important. Also, when it comes to our charter schools and funding around safety and security, I really do think we have to do the right thing and support them. There's been some ideas passed around, as Mr. Barbieri said this morning and earlier, about how we could find a way to fund them. I'd be happy to do that. But I do want to make sure that they are included because academic performance aside, we have to keep our kids safe when they're in the doors. So the other thing that I think that's really important about this is the talk about teacher pay. For the last 3 years that I've watched the budgets come through from the state, we have gotten very little increases from the state. The state increases have been laughable. We have managed during that time to give on average of 3% raises. Those raises have come at the expense of other programs and other places where we have had to cut and we have had to pull back in order to pull off just what I see as a cost of living increase among people who are professionals but are not paid like them. And it's very difficult to live here, as I've mentioned before. So looking at these dollars that we are asking for, I feel that we are coming here with nothing but respect for the fact that this is a big ask. This is a huge ask of our community. But I don't think that we can come at it with the same level of preparation we had last time, because we haven't had the time to prepare that we did last time. We haven't had the time to do the research and look into it. We had teams of people looking into your schools to see where the problems were. We don't have time for teams of people to pull together websites this time. But the need is great, and we do not have time to wait to find out whether or not we can tease out every issue. I don't want to be afraid of an injunction, but I do think that we need this money. We need to be able to go to the voters and ask for it. So tonight, I would like to move forward with the language as it's stated, because I would like to move forward with asking the community this very large question. I don't think we can be the school district you want us to be if we don't do it. And I don't think it'll be the best place for your kids if we can't pull it off. And that makes me really nervous. So I'm going to ask you for it. I am very respectful about what that answer may mean for you. But I think we're going to have to go to you in November and at least ask your permission for this money. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to start with several different issues that I think we need to deal with. The first one is we've talked a lot about the issue of sales tax. We had to ask the public in Palm Beach County to give us the sales tax to deal with construction issues that were critical to this district. Not because we wanted a sales tax increase in Palm Beach County. It's because over the last 10 or 12 years, the state legislature has totally and absolutely failed to fund capital outlay in the state of Florida. And they diverted some of that money to charter schools. So it wasn't our choice that we wanted to ask for this money. We have to have it. We have life safety issues that are critical to the safety of the students in this district that have to be addressed, as well as growth. And we have seen tonight the challenges that we have with growth in this county. So the issue there was back to about, I believe, Mr. Burke, 2008, when we started to see capital outlay that used to fund all of this totally disappeared. One of our speakers earlier talked about the issue of the lottery. I was around when the lottery started. The lottery was created to supplement public education and to allow school districts the opportunity to add and enrich the programs offered in the schools. The state legislature saw that as their solution to using, without adequately funding education. They said that money now from the lottery is included in our basic appropriation of what we receive. So the lottery money has been diverted and taken away from its original purpose. That was something none of us in this room, I think or few of us in this room, were around when that happened, but that's the result. And then we've had the issue of our operating budget and the changes that we've seen. Again, go back to 2008 when the legislature, what we get today per student, if you looked at it today and what we got in 2008, we're getting less per student than we did in 2008. Now, the total dollars has grown because our enrollment in our school system has grown. So again, this one goes back to a legislature that has totally and absolutely failed to act. The issues we have with charter schools is not something that we created. The issue with charter schools and governance has been an issue of the legislature, who has totally been irresponsible in dealing with the governance issues of charter schools. You know, I served as director of charter schools for the district and as a charter school principal. And I've seen some charter schools that have done an amazing job. And I, for one, can say tonight, I don't believe that any one of those children in those charter schools should be any less safe than any of the children in a regular. And I think that you've got 7 board members who totally agree, as well as the superintendent and staff. Our challenge is that, unfortunately, because of lack of action from Tallahassee, has put us in a position where we have to ask and trust that the voters in Palm Beach County are going to help us move forward. My guess is, and this is only my guess, if the tragedy that happened on February 14th had not happened when the state legislature was in session, we would have never gotten any money whatsoever from the state on school safety. Our charter schools right now are, I think the average amount going to each charter school is $20,000. Is that about right, Mr. Burke? $20,000. That's not enough to hire a part-time guard at a single charter school in this district. And we're in a position to have to try to help out. I think Mr. Barbieri's comments were spot on as far as the idea of how we have the accountability for this. My suggestion is, and I have to go along with the recommendation we have tonight, not because I want to be held hostage, but I think the reality is that if we don't address it right here as a school district here, we're going to get handed more of this problem from the legislature next year when they decide that they're going to mandate this money come. I think that the solution for us is that an allocation to the charter schools for school safety, they may think they can be challenged, but my understanding of the law is that we have to share a proportion of those discretionary and those dollars. And there's probably no expectation that we have to do all of it. I don't feel like we have any responsibility whatsoever to fund salaries at charter schools. They're in business. For-profit charter schools are making a profit. If they want to pay their teachers more, take some of their profit and use it to pay your teachers. But the issue of safety, I think, is critical, and I think as the public, we owe that to the public to be in a position where we try to help ensure that the safety of those kids are in place. It's unfortunate. I think there's a lot of different opinions on the issue of the lawsuit and what happened in Indian River County. I do tend to think that the challenges that we have, if we don't go forward, I'm not sure we've got county commissioners that are going to support this if charter schools are included. and I'm not sure what's going to happen. So it may never go anyplace. But I think we have to do something, because I do not want to see us in a position that our fine arts teachers are laid off. I don't want to see that there's any challenge that we have in Palm Beach County that we cannot ensure and do the best we can for safety, and that we can't offer a good living wage to our teachers who are giving their commitment to us every single day. We have to do something as a county. Regardless of whether we want to do it or don't want to do it, we still have that responsibility to do this as a community. And this is one time we have to be inclusionary and ensure that everybody is being protected in that. So I think I'll get off my soapbox on that. Dr. Robinson.
So I agree with many of the comments that have been made, but obviously some I don't. So clearly I want all children to be safe. So there's no disagreement, right? Everybody wants all children to be safe. And even however this goes, if it passes, we're not at 100%. Like, there's no such thing as 100%, but we're going to do everything that we can to make sure children are safe. And I also feel that we need to work to make sure children that attend charter schools are safe. So it's not the what, it's the how. I'm also frustrated by what appears to be a rush, because just the document that Mr. Barbieri referred to came through at 2:33 p.m. And I haven't had a chance to see it, so I feel, at a disadvantage there. But I really do appreciate and respect Mr. Barbieri's analysis. I wrote 13 questions for myself yesterday when I was trying to do my own analysis of what do I think. And some of my questions have not yet been answered, so it really is a rush. But this is what really concerns me. Again, it's not the what, it's the how. So somehow it seems to me, it seems clear as day to me, that if we include the charter schools in this referendum, that we are opening a door to a place we might not want to go. Okay, I'm thinking, and also I don't know if everybody noticed, but there was 2 agenda items where 2 charter schools are paying an agreement with us to pay us to provide security. So it's like the model's there, right? Anyway, so it's a gigantic ask. But if we're going to ask it, it seems to me that we need to be very deliberate about it. Charter schools are in a contractual relationship with us, and it's almost as if, I have a mortgage agreement, and suddenly now they're going to add something to it that wasn't foreseen. It's without negotiation. It's just, are you going to add it or not? It just is not making sense to me. And so my opinion, I wish I had more time and more information, but my opinion at this point is that we should not include the charter schools in this referendum, but we also need to negotiate with them in a way to find a way to provide safety as much as we can to the charter schools. I don't know what that looks like, right? I don't know if that means that we come out of, I don't even want to speculate, but I don't want to start making things up. But I just don't want to open a door that we will not be able to close. I think that there are other ways to make sure that the children in the regular public schools as well as the charter schools are safe. And so I'm just not willing to support the language as it's written at this point.
Mrs. Brill, and then Mr. Barbieri, and then Mrs. McQuinn.
Thank you. And so I'm going to return us to the issue of the possibility of an injunction, as one thing to look at. With the new language where it does state district public schools, in speaking to some attorneys outside of here, they feel that second threat, that because it didn't say including charter schools, won't stand any ground, because district public schools, that language does include charter schools. Now, the elephant in the room is that you got to realize a lot of voters are not going to want to support this no matter what. And we have at risk that quarter mil with all the pieces, the art, the PE, the music, the teachers, we have that at risk. If we don't include the charter schools, a lot of businesses are not going to be supporting us, number one. They'll be acting against us. We'll be up against the charter schools because not all of them are going to trust us to do, just like we don't have some trust in them, they don't have trust in us that we're going to provide the security pieces for them. So, for me, if we don't include them and something is filed, if we go back to the non-charter school language, I think you're running a huge risk of not getting on the ballot, and we can kiss goodbye those positions. I think that together we're stronger because a lot of the voters are not going to want to support this. And so we have to find a way that we can all work together to get those votes out, because we've got a lot at risk. It is a big ask, as Mrs. Whitfield and many others have stated. We need to work together as a team to make sure that we can provide the safety for all the students, but also not be having fighting within the county against, who gets what. I think that our new language is much stronger by saying district public schools. I think the language about the oversight, since we're going to be a pass-through on these dollars, we can provide oversight. And I think that that's the place that, we can assure the public. But I do think that we're running a huge risk if we change the language back and then we wind up not on the ballot. I'm not happy about being on that November ballot to start with all the constitutional amendments. But at this point, we have no choice. But just realize that if we change the language back, you may not see that ballot. And then what are we going to do?
Mr. Barbieri.
Okay, so we all agree that we need to protect the kids in the charter schools, no question. I want to remind the board that the state legislature gave $150 million to the charter schools for capital money. It gave the 90% of the public schools in the state $50 million, 1/3. So certainly the charter schools already have the money to buy cameras, fences, and all the other things that we don't have the money to buy. So that's a given. They have the money because they got 10% of the schools in the state got $150 million, 90% of the schools in the state got $50 million. We can still work out an agreement with the charter schools to provide security and mental health professionals to the charter schools in some form of grant without including them in the referendum. The other thing that we need to consider is today I asked the general counsel to get a constitutional law attorney to tell us whether or not we can file for declaratory relief in the court for a court to say that we do not have to conclude charter schools by state law. Because my feeling is, after reading all this, that we don't have to include them unless we specifically put it in the referendum language, which is what we would do tonight if we use the language that's currently on the table. So I'd like us to try that first. I mean, we have to get to the county commission by August 16th. According to the general counsel's office, we have to approve the referendum language at a regularly scheduled board meeting. There's only one more of those. That's July 18th. So we have until July 18th to figure out whether or not we can work a deal with the charter schools to provide the police protection and the mental health, get a declaratory relief from a court, and still have time by July 18th, if we can work things out, to get it approved at July 18th without the charter schools included, get it to the county commission for their August 16th meeting, in time to get it to the supervisor of elections by August 24th. We come out looking fine because to the public, we're protecting the children in the charter schools, which we have an obligation to make sure they're safe. Yeah. We know that they've got the capital money to buy the things, so they can't complain that they don't have the capital money to buy these things. And we have an obligation to make sure that things like Eagle Arts don't happen again. I mean, Dr. Fenoy, you told me earlier today that of the charter schools that have failed over the last 5 years, we've lost $100 million. $100 million of tax dollars are gone because of failures in the last 5 years of charter schools that have gone out of business. So what are we doing here? We're going to give this money and hope that they show up at the oversight committee meetings once a quarter like we do, like our people do. We got to hope that the charter schools come forward, because up until now they haven't been willing to do much of anything that we ask them to do, because they say the state legislature doesn't require them to do that. So we got to hope that they're going to show up. They're going to be open and honest. Mr. Burke says, well, we can withhold the money if they don't show up. If we withhold the money, they're going to sue us. So we're back in the same situation we are now, right? We're going to get sued one way or the other. So I still think we need time to work this out. We still have time, and I would just assume we move this along and see if we can work things out with the charter schools and offer them the protection that they need, so that we make sure that the children are safe in those schools, and we still have time to get it done by July 18th.
Mrs. Andrews?
Mr. Barbieri, I'm beginning to like this more and more.
Mrs. Andrews, I neglected to look at the clock. It is after 7, so you start after the.
Okay.
We have time certain on our speakers, non-agenda items.